This is the College Football Connection podcast with Marty Jenkins and Alvin Reed on 101 ESPN.
Jordan had the flu game. Kurt Schilling had that celebrated bloody sock game. Hey, it's October. You know that we had to rope baseball into it here. Did Brady Cook yesterday just have the ankle game? No hijinks, no hyperbole. We are flat out serious about the magnitude of yesterday's win in Missouri. Bradford Bruns with you here on the College Football Connection. Week 8 style. It is overtime. The overtime version for you here on 101 ESPN, the YouTube channel, as well as 101ESPN.com. Let me tell you something. Being on the scene there yesterday at Memorial Stadium, it is not an exaggeration to say that with a little help from his friends, the senior quarterback Brady Cook saved the season for the 2024 Missouri Tigers, at least in terms of still maybe being able to have those college football playoff berth aspirations. Everything is still remarkably on the table after that 21-17 come from behind win over Auburn on homecoming Saturday, no less. We will recount those details, and we will also get you up to speed on the newest edition of the Associated Press Top 25 poll, which did produce a shakeup and perhaps not in the capacity you would expect for which you would have hoped if you're a Tigers enthusiast. However, you're hard-pressed right now at this point in time as we close down the weekend here at 101 ESPN to be frustrated, to have any consternation following yesterday's verdict. And that's because after what looked like a very dire set of circumstances well into the second half, Cook, for crying out loud, shortly after kickoff on the Tigers' first possession of the game, experiences that injury. He goes down after keeping it going up the gut. He was tackled in an awkward manner, and you saw just a couple of plays later in attempting to execute that handoff, moving to his left, couldn't really bear weight on it, couldn't plant at that point in time, and then rolling out thereafter, pulling himself out of the game. You knew that something was amiss, though. Only question was exactly what is going to materialize the rest of the way. Well, for this Missouri team, it was in shambles, quite frankly, from an offensive perspective. The defense, Corey Batoon's unit, was phenomenal for the majority of that contest, aside from a momentary lapse to begin the second half, and we will get into that. Very, very sterling performance, one really befitting its status as a top 12 group in the entire nation. The problem is that not knowing precisely what had occurred, what had happened to Cook, you're left offensively with Drew Pine, previously of Arizona State, had the Notre Dame credentials as well, piloting your offense, and not just doing so in blowout fashion here. No, not receiving those reps from earlier in the campaign when games had long since or already been decided. No, he was in charge of trying to orchestrate an attack, and it simply wasn't happening for the young man. Not when you're averaging 3.7 yards per attempt, not when the offensive coordinator Kirby Moore is clearly trying to scale back the playbook and you're not even hitting a Luther Burden on a simple out pattern, when you're not able to hit a Brett Norfleet within a few yards of the line of scrimmage. And yet later in the third quarter, as reports are circulating there in the press box about exactly what is going on with Brady Cook, is he over at the hospital? We had that confirmed for us after the game. Thank you, Coach Drinkwitz. Is he going to somehow, some way be able to muster this Herculean effort to get himself back out on the field and, for all intents and purposes, salvage the Tigers' season? It's 3-3 at halftime. And then to begin the second half, Missouri secondary once again gets caught looking in the opposing backfield. Peyton Thorne was not exactly exemplary at the quarterback position for Auburn yesterday. And yet at that point in time, he's able to loft a beautiful throw over the top down the field to beat MU. Extra point is tacked on. It's 10-3. And then the absolutely unfathomable happens. Luther Burden, the guy on whom you can persistently rely. If you're in a tight spot, you go to LB3 and you expect him to produce in those star-making moments. Inside of his own 10-yard line, he muffs a punt. Auburn jumps on it in the end zone. Touchdown, boom. And the Missouri crowd, beginning the second half, barely knows what to think. As a matter of fact, from on high, we saw, yes, individuals starting to scatter, starting to meander and make their respective ways to the exits even on homecoming Saturday, because that's how deflating it was at that crucial time. Later in the third quarter, the raucous environment returns. And it returns because none other than Cook somehow emerges from the tunnel. He is back. We later discovered he had spent a considerable amount of time at the hospital, indeed, had the MRI, but you didn't know. What is the mobility going to be like? You presume, okay, something with the lower body. Is it a high ankle sprain? Is it worse? Who knows? What can he do? Can he provide to you anything of real substance, of consequence? But what you perhaps didn't exactly anticipate was the absolute surge, the electricity that would be sent through each and every one of his teammates too, because his status as the team captain for the second straight year, as the leader, the commander of this offensive unit and team overall, not to be underestimated. The running game steps up. Nate Noel, for crying out loud, he couldn't stay in the game for a prolonged stretch because not only was he afflicted by the back ailment that sidelined him versus UMass, he has a foot issue early in this game, limited to 6 carries. Marcus Carroll gives you some punch. He actually scored the first MU touchdown there to begin the fourth quarter. He has the 8 carries. Jamal Roberts, though, stepping up in pass protection, blitz pickup, the running game himself as well. And then all of a sudden, rather inexplicably, Moore decides to call some more high-octane shots down the field. Cook is moving around pretty well, back in the game, perhaps feeling nothing, quite frankly, and he's just attacking the middle of the field. That seam throw that was executed to Mookie Cooper that almost went all of the way, not just 70-plus yards, could have been a score there. Luther Burden busting it to try to spring him all the way to pay dirt, was one of the most exquisite throws that you have seen from number 12 in an MU uniform. It simply was. And it didn't stop there, because even though, yes, Missouri stalled on the drives, had numerous opportunities in the fourth quarter to be able to tie the game, maybe even go ahead, Auburn gift-wrapped opportunity after opportunity, and Mizzou was stagnant at times. Yet the Tigers from Georgia absolutely go into a shell from a play-calling standpoint, running it very predictably, not only with Thorne, but pretty much wasting the efforts of a Hunter in the backfield. Missouri's defense holds. And more to the point, on the last drive that you were going to get in that ball game, with everything on the line, you start at your own 5-yard line, and Missouri was buried inside of its own 10 for the better part of the fourth quarter, that fourth stanza. You go 17 plays, encompassing 95 yards, numerous third and fourth down conversions, and your drive isn't, most important of all, isn't short-circuited by the penalties that have plagued you all campaign. Wonderful throws, astute decision-making, and just improvisational stuff from Cook as he's rolling out to his weak side to boot to pick up a couple of first downs on the ground with his legs. Shortly thereafter, Jamal Roberts plunges in from 4 yards out, and you're salting away a 21-17 victory. After the game, Eli Drinkwitz, understandably so, as well as Brady Cook, those guys were unbelievably emotional, and you could understand, you could hear the authenticity in those voices as they recounted just how much this victory meant, not only in the homecoming setting, but for the duration of the season. At that point in time, ladies and gentlemen, we did not know exactly what was going to happen with Alabama and Tennessee. We didn't know about Georgia and Texas. Those games were later on the slate, the Week 8 slate last night. Now everything, in hindsight, absolutely everything, is still on the table for you as we keep going along here on the College Football Connection on 101 ESPN's YouTube channel and 101ESPN.com. Missouri has still succumbed in just one contest this season, one contest, and on Saturday you're traveling to Tuscaloosa to take on the Crimson Tide, which just went down in another thriller to Tennessee. Texas fell hard to Georgia yesterday, so all of those behemoths, the Titans, the heavyweights in league play, they have one loss or more. Missouri has just the one, so you really do wonder about exactly what could still be there for the taking down the stretch. Can you pull off an insurmountable, seemingly insurmountable sort of victory, the setting there in Tuscaloosa? It's still being played in Alabama. A lot of it's going to boil down to exactly what Cook is able to do as we learn or try to dig a bit more into his status, that murky medical status in the days leading up to the game. Missouri is shorthanded right now. Make no mistake about it, or at least compromised physically. But the spiritual and mental lift that was administered yesterday in that setting, that's about as signature as it gets. Shades of Kansas State, shades of Florida last season, but I would venture to say, I would contend, magnify that, multiply the emotions and the overall cumulative effect, because it's happening during Cook's senior season and with this stalwart class of upperclassmen, realizing that time, as Cook himself said, time is ticking down for so many individuals there at Faurot Field. Right now, you have just the 2 home tilts left, Oklahoma as well as Arkansas, to conclude the season. But before then, so many more road tests that have suddenly become, at least on paper, maybe a little bit more manageable. Speaking of the polls, as we close it down here on the College Football Connection, Oregon, by virtue of its absolute blowout victory on Friday night, moving up to number 1 with that Texas loss, 30-15 versus the Bulldogs. Don't look now, but Georgia is back in the number 2 spot, while Alabama slides into the teens as the Crimson Tide this coming weekend will attempt to avoid 3 losses before the calendar month of November for the first time since 2006. We get that it's going to be a tall task in more ways than one for MU, but suddenly a lot of things, many more things, seem possible, or at least are in that realm of possibility. As always, we appreciate your listening and your watching here with us as we try to deliver that bonus content on the 101 ESPN YouTube channel. I am Bradford Bruns, my regular cohorts, Marty Jenkins, Alvin Reed. You know that we're all going to be back here in the studio in just a few days. Week number 9, it's not only Mizzou and Alabama. You just wait. Quality contests galore. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And until next time, take care. Have a tremendous one.
You've been listening to the College Football Connection podcast with Marty Jenkins and Alvin Reed on 101 ESPN Sports Talk for St. Louis.